Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. Have conversations with God. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and he spoke freely and openly about God telling him to do various things. From the sound of things, my friend and God, they seem to have an open line of communication, which sounds pretty normal. Well, how about you? Do you have conversations with God? Let us talk about this exciting and mysterious issue. For some people, it is a regular occurrence. God is their friend. For others of us, it sounds sacrilegious to claim to have conversations with God. God is too holy for you to bring down a talk with him to that of conversations. Still, for others, there are many people who say that they don't even know when God is talking to them, that they don't even know what God sounds like, and they don't even know if God really talks to them. Well, let us check this phenomenon out. I call on you, my God, for you will answer me. Turn your ear to me and hear my prayer. Psalm 17, verse 6. Everybody knows of David, the shepherd boy turned king of Israel. David had a great relationship with God, and a feature of that relationship was that David and God would talk frequently as friend with friend. All throughout the Psalms, you read of David and his talking, his conversations with God. We could go back even earlier to Abraham. In Genesis 15, God and Abraham had a full-blown conversation. At that time, his name was Abram. Well, here's a piece of that conversation. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abraham said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my house will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Genesis 15, verses 1 to 6. Isn't that cool? It sounds like they had a great rapport, and so God could visit him at any time and they would talk about anything. Did you notice, for example, that God took Abram outside? What that says is that the conversation started when God came to see his friend Abram inside. Later on, God visited Abram again. I want you to see how God can relate to us humans in a comfortable way. Then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh and say, Will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. But he said, Yes, you did laugh. Genesis 18, verses 10 to 15. Do you think you could have such a comfortable conversation with God? Many people think that the only time they talk to God is when they pray. Well, do you know that God is so awesome that not only does he answer your prayers when the miracle arrives sometime later, but right there while you are talking to God in prayer, God can talk back to you. He surely does. Now, when you talk about having conversations with God, you've got to talk to Moses. Moses was 80 years old when he met God for the first time at the scene of the burning bush in the desert. Exodus 3. Well, for the next 2 chapters, Moses was there in the desert talking to God from a burning bush. It did not even occur to Moses that, hey, guy, you can't see God, so how are you having conversation with God? But the story says that they had a vibrant, full-blown conversation going back and forth as God came to appoint Moses to be the liberator of the Hebrew people who were slaves in Egypt for over 400 years. And Moses was there giving God all kinds of excuses. In fact, Moses and God had such an amazing relationship that God would just show up and him and Moses would talk. Listen to this instance. In Exodus 24, God invited Moses up to the mountain and a cloud just wrapped itself around Moses. You won't believe this. Moses stayed up in the mountain for 40 days. God did not offer him anything to eat or drink, but hanging out with Jesus for 40 days, Moses enjoyed it immensely. Let me ask you something. Do you think that Moses sat around while he was there with God for 40 days and did not once open his mouth, or God did not say anything to him? Moses and God were up in the mountain and they were having conversation. Let me step into your world. You are a child of God. Please know that God, who can be found in the most holy place up in heaven, has given you full access to come into his throne room in prayer. Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and having our bodies washed with pure water. Hebrews 10 verses 19 to 22. My friend, this is not a field trip to the mall. This is you who goes up to where God is, and on those occasions, God talks with you. It is not a one-way street where you come into God's presence and just talk the whole time, and when you're done, you get up off your knees and leave. God will sometimes interrupt you to say something to you, or he will wait for you to stop talking, praying, and then he starts to talk to you. I wish I could convince you that this is real, but don't take my word for it. You visit God the next time you have time to pray and tell God that it is you coming into his presence and that you want to learn what it is to hear God's voice, and you will get a chance to respond. Let me say something conclusively. When you have a conversation with God, where you say something in your prayer and the Holy One who is right there with you responds and not just give one word, there is nothing quite like it. Just now I was reminded of a hymn that says in part, "My God and I go in the field together. We walk and talk as good friends should and do. We clasp our hands, our voices ring with laughter. My God and I walk through the meadow's hue." This is no joke. This is no fantasy. Don't let this day end, my friend, and you do not have a conversation with God. And please listen, because he has something to say. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. Psalm 3 verse 4. Enjoy your visit with Jesus, my friend. He has something he wants to say to you.